Hi everyone, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to share with you how I made this bright watercolor background with some powder watercolors. I also am going to have this SVG over on my blog for free. It is a slimline card design. If you are unfamiliar with the slimline card size, it is 3.5 by 8.5 and that is in inches. But over on my blog as well, I will leave this link down below. I have a free PDF file that shares how to make all the different sizes of cards with their card bases. And then I also included the slimline card because this is a little bit newer size. And like I said, measures 3.5 by 8.5 inches. So I just made that size of card base to match my slimline card front. Now that card front, that SVG file is also cut to 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches. The beauty of the slimline card, it fits in your standard legal size envelope. We all have these lying around that we send our bills off in, or we get these for free with different payments that might be due. It's a really common size envelope. You can find them at most of your local stores. So very easy to find envelopes for these size cards. So that SVG will be over there. It's what I'm using today, but any sort of full-size card front panel that you may have, whether it's die or SVG, this technique works really well, and it's a very quick technique to do to kind of give your cards some life. So I have these color burst watercolor powders. These are not the only powdered watercolors that you can get. You can also get Brusho. There are many different brands. And these also go by a different name now. I will leave them linked down below in the supply list. But here I have them kind of all swatched out. I have them in rainbow order that I will be using them in. The beauty about these, there are all sorts of little different colored granules in them. So when you spray them, you get a variety of colors. They're really beautiful, very, very vibrant, and you don't need a lot of it. These will last you a very, very, very long time. So I'm starting off with a watercolor panel, and I have taped it down with a little bit of low tack painter's tape to a clipboard. This is going to keep it nice and flat, and I will show you the difference between allowing your panel to dry on this and allowing it to air dry later. But I've taped down one panel, and I'm going to start with this fuchsia color. Now with the powdered watercolors, you just want to give them a nice little tap on the little bottoms of them. You don't want to squeeze them and poof them. You'll get too much of that, and you'll get kind of a plume of color. So just give it a little tap, and I'm kind of putting them in a straight line. Now I will just continue down the colors of the rainbow. I'm using this orange color next and just adding a little bit by tapping on the bottom. Now I'm overlapping them just slightly, but once I add water to this, that water is really going to do all the work. I'm also not adding a whole lot of the watercolor powder. This is very concentrated. It is very vibrant. You don't need a ton of it. I just want to make sure that I get a nice variation of all the different colors that I'm adding. So I'm trying to space them out pretty well here and kind of give them each equal sections if I can. So I'm finishing up with this blue turquoise color. It came out very fast, so I've got a lot of it on there. And then I'll finish off with this purple color and just sprinkle some of it down. Now here's where it gets fun. I get to add water to this, just straight plain water, and it is going to start blooming out. I like to start off with less water, and I can always add more if I need to, but I like to see how far it's going to go with just a few spritzes. So I start off gently, about a couple inches above, and I just start spraying down that water, concentrating on each section, making sure I get all of those powders. Now, any powder that does not get water on it will stay in a powder form. It will brush off later. So you want to make sure that you're getting it all wet. So I let it sit, I let it do its thing, let it run for a little bit, and then I'll come back, and if I need to, I will add more water. And you can see just how vibrant these colors are. Now with these watercolors, You can allow this to sit and dry and it would be beautiful, but this is a lot of color to go to waste for me. So I just went ahead and I have this extra sheet of, you can use plain cardstock, I'm using watercolor paper, and I'm just gonna sit that right down on top to soak up some of that extra color. That is going to do a beautiful job of making 2 card panels that I can then use instead of just one. Now, while I have this pressed down, I'm going to use a paper towel just to get all of that excess color from around the edges. Like I said, this is very, very potent stuff. So anything this touches, it is going to dye, including your hands. If you don't want your hands dyed, please put on gloves for this process and also cover your work surface. I'll let that soak in for a few minutes and then I will lift it off. Now, when lifting it off, you might get this harsh line on that side. I just like to use a paper towel and blot it up, or you can just leave it. It will kind of just dry and lighten up a little bit. But I will give this a good pat and kind of get off all that extra color. But you can see just how vibrant those colors really are. Now, once I get that very dark line kind of blotted up, I am then going to take a paper towel once I've allowed it to sit and really soak in for a few minutes and clean up all those extra edges. On this painter's tape, it just won't ever dry, and it's going to be a mess later on when I try and remove it. I'm also going to just put a paper towel over it and dry up any extra kind of liquid that's on top to kind of speed up the drying process. Again, you can allow this to just sit and dry on its own, but I just wanted it a little bit quicker. You can also use a heat gun to dry it, but I will just allow mine to air dry. I want to show you the difference between allowing it to air dry while it's attached to the clipboard and one just on its own. So I've got 2 of these panels. So you can see when it dries on its own, it's got that really harsh curve to it. If you want to avoid that, tape your projects down, whether it's to a hard surface, like I'm using a clipboard here. You can use pieces of old cardboard. You can use backs of notebooks that are a little bit thicker. Anything hard, a little bit more stabilizing, you can tape this down to. And I am just using a low tack painter's tape. I will leave it linked down in the supply list as well. But you can use regular painter's tape. Masking tape will also work. I know quite a few companies have come out with different kinds of tape that are low tack tapes. That's all you're looking for, is a low tack tape that will remove easily from your paper and won't rip it. Once that panel is dry, it's time to attach that SVG file that I cut out in the beginning. Now, if you are like me and you struggle with these really intricate cut files or die cuts, especially with glue, I hate gluing them so much. So tedious, and I never feel like I get good enough coverage. Here's a little hack that I found that is great. In this jar off to my right hand side, what I have is essentially a collage medium. All it is some PVA white glue, so just your regular basic Elmer's glue, glue all, anything like that. And I've mixed it with a little bit of water, distilled water, just to thin it down. Now, any kind of water will do. I just used distilled because that's what I had on hand for my watercolor making. But I added that and mixed it up, and then I used a foam brush to apply it. This applies a very thin layer, but it's fully coated and everything is glued down. I don't have any bits that are poking up or peeking out. It's really great. I love the needle point glue tips. Those work really well too, but it's a little tedious for me to go through and glue all of these pieces. So this PVA mixed with a little bit of water and a foam brush really does help with gluing down these more intricate, larger, full card panels that I'm gluing down here. Now, once that's glued down, I'm going to allow that to dry, and then I will just attach that to that card base. Again, this is Slimline sized card base, so it's 3.5 inches by 8.5 inches, and you can find that PDF on how to make all your different card bases over on my blog for free. But to help me align that, I am using my Misty. Once I have that pushed down, I'll go ahead and take that out, and it's time to add the sentiments. Now for the sentiment, I went ahead and cut a thanks sentiment again from my Cricut. Now you can use any sort of sentiment on this. It doesn't have to be the thanks sentiment that I used here. I simply cut it out with my Cricut, but I also cut out this wildflower SVG set that is also available over on my blog completely for free. But any sort of flower leaf die cut will do for this. I always cut them out in white, and then I can just use my ink pads to color them whatever color I want them. So in this case, I used black, and then I added a piece of white cardstock to some vellum that I ripped onto the both edges, top and bottom. And I'll just apply that with a little bit of foam adhesive to the front of the card base. It gives it a little bit of separation from that background. Then I will attach that wildflower die cut. Again, I'm using that PVA glue here. Just a little bit goes a long way, so I'm just applying that with my foam brush and applying that down to the white cardstock panel. And then I will add that little thanks sentiment that I also cut with my Cricut, but any sort of stamp sentiment would look lovely on this kind of card and this bright, bold background. I would just suggest using a darker color like black. But that is going to do it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out all those links down in the description box below. And until next time, happy crafting, everyone.